Hello, and welcome to the Agile Magician's Bookshelf. And by our work, we are changed. So I thought what we do this evening, we're only going to be on for about half an hour. So what we're going to do is take a quick look at some of these little Aquarian pamphlet-like books, because I wanted to talk about practice, the actual practice of being an actual magician. So I'm going to fight through my the last of my remaining cold, flu, whatever horribleness that was, and we're just going to talk. I've been collecting these books ever since I started. In fact, I think the Gareth Knight one here was one of the first books I ever bought, and I've just been actually communicating with Anne Pyatt, Ligeia, occult second-hand books. She's selling the estate of her parents, one of whom was Bill Turner. I can't remember his exact name at the moment. It's still some of the flu in my head, I'm afraid. And they were founders of the Order of the Cubic Stone, which I worked with briefly, corresponded, communicated with, had a few issues of their magazine well back in the day. And he had, or the family had, about 3 of these that I hadn't quite got. So I've just been buying those off her in order to build up my little collection of these little books. But I think it's a great way. And hello, Tony. Welcome, Tony, erstwhile moderator. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to go through some of these just to talk briefly about the actual practice of being a actual magician, because I was aware that some of the members only content we're talking about the laws of initiation, and it's getting quite abstract. So I thought we'd, in the public sphere at least, talk a little bit more about the actual practice and so forth. So welcome Apox, welcome Nerdy Rodent, and welcome one and all to the Friday session. We're going to run for about half an hour this evening, and thanks for bearing with me in the experiment last week, where we switched to members only after half an hour. I figured out exactly how that works sort of after the fact. It basically starts off a second stream and then moves people across into that stream. So I ended up with 2 recordings, and you'll see in the channel that there's one half an hour recording, and then there's another half an hour of the same session, but that's flagged for members only, so it sort of splits it automatically. So the next time we do that, I'll actually be able to segue out of the public session and then segue back into the private session, the members only session, so it makes a little bit more sense in the recordings for those watching afterwards. So these are Aquarian books. They were published by Aquarian Press back in the day. They are very small little books, almost like pamphlet size, booklet size, and they involve a range of subjects and a range of authors as well, particularly a name that most people might be familiar with in the Western Esoteric Industry System, Gareth Knight, and also W.E. Butler, about which there are a couple of biographies. One called The Old Sod, I think, because apparently he was a little bit of a curmudgeon, as we might say, and in that he reminds me of my own teacher, who could be quite ruthless to some extent, and about some of the things that people have said about the recently departed Dolores Ashcroft Nowicki as well, about not suffering fools gladly and so forth. I don't think it gives you a automatic pass to be an old sod or just a horrible person if you are a so-called occult teacher, but it does seem to be part of the historical tradition of such a thing. So on the back of this one, we have the full list of the paths to inner power, and I welcome questions in this half an hour to keep us on track and to make sure that I'm talking about things of interest to people, something relevant, and more importantly, something useful in your own practice as well. So the Aquarian Press was based in Wellingborough, Northamptonshire, and this is Flax, Fodder and Frig. That's interesting incantation, I guess, in this book by Eric Maple, and say it's the Paths to Inner Power series, and they did continue to produce them. Let me just put that carefully somewhere here in a slightly larger format. Strange enough, this the heaviest book of the lot is this one on levitation, physically bigger and heavier. This is part of a later version of the Aquarian Paths to Inner Power series, and I'm more interested in seeing if I can put together the original ones, these little pamphlet ones, because they were so influential in my own growth, I guess, experimentation with Western esotericism. It gives us an idea of some of the subject matter, the curriculum, if you like, in effect, the syllabus of the Western esoteric system. And here we have occult healing, astral projection, candle burning, divination, dowsing, dreams, which is part of, I guess, divination, first steps to astrology. There's a book on, where was the one on astrology? I put that somewhere. This Understanding Astrology one. It's actually by Sasha Fenton, but not part of the original smaller series. Clairvoyance, psychometry, talismans, how to read the aura. There's that one. It's about somewhere. This one here, W.E. Butler, how to read the aura. How to understand tarot, hypnosis, incantation and words of power, the one that we're holding here. Introduction to the chakras, karma yoga, magic mirrors, numerology. This is alphabetical, isn't it? Psychosomatic yoga, telepathy, mystical Kabbalah, the 12 rays, and your character from the stars. So I think, as Tony is saying, that they have more awe in them, or perhaps because we were younger and more unlearned and innocent back in the day. And again, there's a certain nostalgia factor as well in holding these. And actually, this belongs to someone in Cumbria, which is interesting, Penrith, just down the road from me now. And by the same author, Deadly Magic, the magic of perfume, the ancient art of occult healing. And yeah, these sort of first published in 1974. This is a second impression in 1977. They kept these running for quite a little while. So we have Words of Power, The Sing and the Song, Love, Healing Words, Whispers of Nature, The Power of Evil, White Magic, The Speaking Dead, and Prayer. I think it is a sense of nostalgia, a reminder of a slightly simpler time as well. So there's an introduction here, which is literally 1.5 pages. And then a general thing about words of power, Sanskrit mantras, songs, hallucinations, sacred hymns. And again, it's all literally covered in about 1 page. These would be barely a blog entry these days, although at least these aren't written by AI. So, love, and then I don't know why the English Witchcraft Act 1542 is in there. And some old fertility rhymes and folklore things. Healing words, again, we're sort of going back to folklore, Christian charms, and also curses, of course, charms and curses. few things about an invocation to the... this is actually using Shelley's Ode to the West Wind, which I think when I was doing a lot of witchcraft work, particularly with a high priestess, a German high priestess I was working with for over a decade, she was very much into romantic poetry, the romantics, so Shelley, Keats, all of the, even some of the Christian, sort of John Donne and things like that. And so we used to use a lot of poetry stolen from poems into our rituals and invocations, evocations as well. So again, just a short section there on the Sibyl, the power of evil, the witch's Sabbath, and this Asmodeus was master of lust, Mammon was master of greed, Beelzebub was master of gluttony, Belphegor was master of sloth, the serpent was arch deluder of the race, Leviathan was king of envy. And so there's, again, it's not really properly cited. A lot of this is off-the-cuff writing and a general compendium. It's sort of like, and Blake as well, as the Nerdy Rodent is saying, definitely Blake. I've got the fully illustrated works of Blake on the kitchen coffee table downstairs at the moment, although I've got about 100 books on top of it at the moment, because obviously I'm trying to work out if I'm moving or not at the moment. So yeah, Blake is definitely the powerful stuff. White Magic, Tennyson as well, of course. All of the great English, and also people, some of the American poets like Walt Whitman and so forth. There's some very powerful American poets as well. And a brief thing on white magic, again, it's a sort of Christian folklore, and then like literally one page on Wicca, spelled W-I-C-C-A, and this is where we get the flax, fodder and frig, hearth, home, clothing, food and love, or sex, in the back there, and something about semi-necromancy and exorcisms at the back, prayer as well. So we can see that there's a sort of supernatural element there, and all of these subjects, for example, Butler's How to Read the Aura, they are very practical, and I think this is one of the uses of the initial practice, that as we start the initiatory system, one of the important things for people is to generate, in the early grades of neophyte and zealotor, there's a sense of wanting to generate what in alchemy is called calcination. It's the slow burning fire, and that has to be evoked, it has to be recruited, it has to be maintained, and it has to be maintained thereafter. We don't lose the work of the lower grades. We are constantly feeding back into them and allowing them to build us up and support us as a foundation, the literal meaning of the word yesod, as we progress up through the grades. We don't just hop from one grade to another. It's more of a filling back in process and a backfilling as we make progress as well, particularly in the sense of a computer game where you do a particular area and you can't progress because you don't have a particular key to open a magical door to get to the next section of the game. You might have to go back and find that the key or the clue to the key is a bit further back, and then you come back to where you currently are. Then you follow the clue, you find the key, and then that opens something else. And sometimes some of the lower grades are incomplete. One can't possibly work on every single practice, because otherwise you'd spend your entire lifetime just doing a little bit of astral travel, a little bit of dream work, a little bit of Enochian, a little bit of Gurdjieff, a little bit of tarot, a little bit of conspiracy theory, a little bit of chaos magic, a little bit of Thelema, a little bit of sex magic, a little bit of everything, and you never really get into all of it. And Snakes and Ladders is definitely a good model of that, as Bill is suggesting in the chat. And there are several illustrations of Snakes and Ladders. I remember, I think it was in a Michael Moorcock New Worlds science fiction compilation back in the day, where there was a Kabbalistic pinball machine, and the ball, the sphere, was bopping in between the Sephiroth, which were the sort of bouncing, whatever they're called, pivot points in the game, in the pinball machine, and the illustrations underneath were the tarot cards. So the ball was bouncing around the tree of life. And I think it's a lot more like being in a pinball machine than it is being in a slalom or something like that, or a roller coaster, where it's just one particular route. We're constantly moving around, highlighting certain things, having certain things illustrated until we get the whole picture all in one go, of course. Or the ball falls down and we have to pull the pin on the other side and bounce another ball into play. I guess that's a what's that? Perhaps reincarnation or something like that. It's just when a ball goes between the flippers and we have to pull back and launch ourselves back into the game again. So there is a sense of being a exploratory, experimental, but also ultimately tempting and distracting world for the neophyte, and particularly for now, as we all have access to the internet from birth now, of course, that people can be distracted and tempted by so many avenues that they never go beyond neophyte. They are always new to something, or feeling themselves new in something, or getting that dopamine hit of discovering something new again and again and again and again, and not progressing, not building that foundation up. So the Zelator work we give as practice for a year, devoted to one particular thing. I did Zelator work for witchcraft. I did Zelator work for the OTO. My Zelator work was on active dreaming, lucid dreaming, and dream scrying, and dream journeying, and a few other little techniques within the sort of astral realm of dream work. And so I kept a diary every day for a year. I studied it. I didn't do any other studies. I did use tarot at the time, but that was only in service of dream work and actually entering into dreams through tarot cards and things like that. So a lot of that initial work is basically to train the candidate for initiation in terms of consistency, tenacity, persistence, and utilizing that zeal for a particular goal. And therefore it is training the will, it is training intent, it's training authenticity, living what you say you are living, all of that sort of congruity, consistency, and comprehensiveness within a particular subject itself. And so we are trying to, as Nerdy Rodent is mentioning, get out of that perma-newbie status into a slightly breakthrough within that particular subject. And this is really what the initiate is waiting for that candidate coming through the system. We are waiting for that person to have a particular breakthrough within the content of what they are studying, but also in terms of something else as well. And I can't tell you that because that's a a secret reserved for a higher grade, as we used to joke about, but it is in effect true in this case, that we are waiting for a particular question, a particular state that generates that inevitable question, and the question is always the same, even if it's worded slightly differently from person to person, and it is accompanied with a state that is ready to move beyond the permanube and beyond the constant seeking that one can get trapped into at neophyte and to some extent Zelator. As I often say, I know a lot of very, very good Zelators. But some of them have got the grade of Adeptus Exemptus in the OTO, or Exemptus, Lodge of the Ninth Arch within Freemasonry, or all sorts of other nominated performative grades, but that is not the same that I'm talking about with the initiation system per se, that underneath all of those systems there is a fundamental state change, as we've been looking at in the members only section with the 10 laws of initiation. By the way, I have started to write those up for the Magister now, so thank you for bearing with me with the videos, because hopefully you're getting to see how something a little bit amorphous gets systemized and optimized into a piece of writing, because we can talk about it, discuss it, have questions and answers about it in YouTube and stuff, but in a book you don't have that luxury, so it has to be formalized, it has to be formularized, and it has to be consistent and slightly more tweaked as well. In writing, so that's being done at the moment. But that is where that state change is so important, that the initiation is not whether you have mastered a particular subject, a particular method, a particular technique, or a particular set of knowledge or understanding. It's a bit more than that, but these are the way in. These are definitely the way in. So someone might look at chakras, someone might look at TM, transcendental meditation, someone might become an expert at runes, palmistry, the I Ching, and to some extent with the Kabbalistic work, this is one of the meta systems within this, a little bit like the whole snakes and ladders board, because we can use this a little bit like we might look at precious stones and incense, for example, and we can do a correspondence between certain precious stones and certain incense, and then we can actually use those in the practice of ritual magic using Kabbalah as a framework to do that. So for initiation, for the initiatory work, we are more interested in synthesizing this, testing it, repeating it, testing it again, refining our model of the universe, because we are using all of these to test our relationship to reality, to make a fundamental inquiry as to what is possible, what is actual beyond science, beyond our own senses and so forth. And this is particularly, and also our relationship to space and time, which is why the banishing ritual and the rose cross and the middle pillar and Liber Resh, those four techniques, and there are four of them, that I fundamentally teach people within our Crucible Club, within the Order of Everlasting Day, because they fundamentally affect our relationship to time, to space, to the self, and to our relationship to the universe as a self in space and time. And those four methods are fundamental to actually experiencing something beyond the usual, something actually occult, something actually secret, something mystical, something actually magical, not just a performance of something, or the knowledge of something, or the teaching of something, or the writing of something. It's your actual experience that changes your insight into the world and your relationship to it. So I am just answering Bill's question about the banishing ritual in Nima's book, as effective as the Golden Dawn version. I find the variants of the less banishing ritual of the pentagram, particularly the ones that include the Kabbalistic cross. For example, there is the Star Ruby, Aleister Crowley's or AA version of that, and there is the Aurum Solis version, which is far more Greek PGM derived and a little bit more poetic and a little bit more theatrical. And then there's Maggie's version and so forth. So I think there is the fundamental thing for me with the banishing ritual are two things. One is, does it serve the purpose of reorientating the initiate to their spatial awareness and sense of being in space? So, for example, you can expand your awareness with the banishing ritual so that the angels are as large as the earth, and your astral being is literally your feet on the globe of the earth, and that is just underneath the soles of your feet, and your head is literally rising to the heavens and so forth. And so I think it's important to experience that through the banishing ritual, and to allow it to reorientate your whole spatial awareness. So if it does that, that is fine. To me, it is good. It's essential for that practice, for me, for at least for the system as I teach it. And the second thing is, can it be internalized and ritualized so much that it happens whether you like it or not when required? For example, when you later are working on more, for example, just even at the level of self-development, self-insight, psychotherapy, counseling work, even shadow work and things like that, where you're starting to really invoke your whole self into yourself, both good and bad, it's really often that you meet the dweller on the threshold at that stage. And it's really important that your whole psyche can conjure up a pentagram and separate yourself out from something that is otherwise overwhelming, or even worse, can possess your psyche and even break your psyche apart into parts and things like that can then run on their own little engines because of the work you're doing. It's important to have a method by which you can bind those together, and then later on, when those things are not just parts of your psyche expressed in dreams or chaos going on in your life around you, that they are actual evil entities, the lords of the dominions, the evil spirits, the kings of hell and things like that. For example, after the Liber Astarte, after the Abramelin ritual and things like that, that it is absolutely, you cannot then just make up a ritual or just be able to think that you're going to do something that you haven't long practiced for that experience, because they will find you out, they will get in the gap, they will all sorts of things will happen at that point. And what is the worst thing is that the person will not even know. When I've seen this happen, they do not even know what is happening to them as it is happening, no matter what people say to them and what happens in the world around them. Their soul is gone at that point. It is too late. So it is really essential to get this stuff in practice in your very bones right from the beginning. And as Tony is saying, change the 6 or 8 stars slightly in the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, feels better and fits better. That is absolutely fine. I don't have so many modifications myself to my own personal LBRP, but I do have some for the Rosy Cross, the ritual of the Rosy Cross, or the ritual of the Rose Cross. I have quite a few variations to that just, again, felt better, fit better, as Tony is saying, that tested out over many, many years, that was just another way of doing the same thing that just suited me, suited the visualizations better, and so forth. So I think there is a use in the initial practices, but we mustn't confuse them with the work itself. The initiatory part of the work of Western esotericism is woven into this, but it is not apparent in it, because that is why it is occult. People think that practicing ritual magic is occult, but actually, if you can watch someone practicing the ritual, it's not very occult. Only what is going on in their head is occult. And what is actually esoteric is the fact that that has a paving slab on the road to actual initiation as well. And it is important, no matter whether you are, as Nerdy Rodent is saying, chatting with the gnomes of Eliphas Levi and being able to bind things, or being able to void instead of pentagram. All of those things are part of Malkuth. They're part, to some extent, of Yesod with the psychological level. To some extent, they are below the veil in terms of being part of the mind, being able to discuss it, have chat about it, write about it, communicate it, part of HOD, and then part of your emotional world and identity and emotional states, in terms of it feeling better or feeling worse or feeling anything, is part of NetSac as well. And that is all below the veil. To some extent, the lower grades, as they say, quit not Malkuth, and there is a very, very clear reason for the Golden Dawn stating that sort of thing, because I do believe that the founders of the Golden Dawn were experienced enough to understand, and there are little hints here and there about the initiatory system itself and the purpose of it. They hadn't yet devolved the system to just be a curriculum of grades and badges and sashes and aprons and knowledge, secret knowledge hidden until a particular level and so forth. So there is a sense of, again, I learned a great word today, and I can't remember what it is now. Asumont? It's on my Facebook page, but it's a word that basically allows for a law to go out of use by the lack of its use, and it's a dictum, a procedural thing in law that allows for something to fall into disregard or disrepute or just merely disuse and be got rid of on that basis alone. And I do feel that initiation, the laws of initiation, fall into that category to some extent, that they have been forgotten, and therefore no one needs them, no one uses them, no one knows them, because no one needs them, because they've not been applicable to the work that people have been doing over time in in the popular awareness of the occult. Oh, thank you, Tony. Desuetude. It comes from de and sue, meaning to be familiar with. So it's a lack of being familiar with a thing, and so it falls into disrepair, and it allows the law to tidy up behind itself, so it's not dragging a load of laws as active principles that have not been applicable because society has changed, the world has changed, and so forth. So that's it. Yes, that's what I put. It is a rather apt and sad word, particularly for the laws of initiation, desuetude. I love the fact it sounds quite sad. It sounds forlorn, the word itself, like a longing of something long past, like that nostalgia that we were talking about with these books as well. Perhaps that's why I decided to bring these books out to play. So, again, this is from the Bow Repair Nexus on loan from Mark Green. That was me back in the day. Bow repair was the old Latin word for Belper, where we had the temple at that time, and we were the Bow Repair Nexus, a nexus within the International Mart Network, or EMN as it was at the time. And this book was really, I mean, it's got like a do-it-yourself robe, a do-it-yourself pillar at the back, a do-it-yourself Kabbalistic rose cross, how to make a robe, how to make a pillar, and then a very simple declaration of intent, opening ritual of the pentagram, talismanic images, the names of power, Yod-Heh, Adonai, Ehyeh, Agla, Raphael, Michael, Gabriel, Oriel, for the 4 quarters. And basically, it's just the lesser banishing ritual with a bit of description around it. And I don't think the lesser banishing ritual is... Oh, no, it is fairly clear in here, the opening ritual of the pentagram. But that is literally the practice of ritual magic, is just that. So it was useful to have that as a calibration to the other work that I was doing at the time. So this is a wonderful little collection of books. It does help us give a curriculum, a syllabus to the practice of Western esotericism. And you'll see all of these still online in books, as if people are making them up for new out of the blue. Long forgotten, these from the 70s, where all of this was already being developed, and being developed long around and beyond what's in these little booklets. This was just a little taster into the esoteric world of the time. So before we finish, does anyone have any particular questions about any of these subjects? Or obviously we can talk about these in more depth in future videos, and also in the members only section we can perhaps go into. I would love to do a whole long thing on incense, because I've used incense an awful lot over the years and just love making incense cones. I love some of the Japanese rituals around incense and incense games, which I don't think a lot of people know about. Japanese incense games that you can play in a group with different bits of the very thin incense sticks that are traditional in Japan. So yeah, we could do an awful lot with some of these subjects, that's for sure. But also in the way that they underpin and what their place is, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make about the Western esoteric initiatory system, that you should follow the things that interest you, because it is important that you build a commitment. And also the last thing that I'll leave with is from the initiate's point of view, 2 grades further beyond neophyte and zelator, what we are looking for is actually the establishment of and demonstration of faith. that is really, underneath everything else, what we are secretly looking for in the candidate, that they have developed and have faith in the system. Because the reason that people do this underneath everything else is to just have something added, some experience, that there is something that they have some control over, something that is beyond themselves, that there is a reality to reality outside of the felt normal human experience. And it is a good way of hooking people into the outer courtyard, knowing that that is really what they're looking for. They're not necessarily interested in chakras or TM or occult exercises or precious stones or incense or the I Ching. They are seeking. And it is the point where seeking becomes established in the seat of faith that we are then looking to initiate that candidate from that point onwards, because we then know further along the road of initiation, or up the mountain of initiation, or down the well of initiation, however we want to refer to it, that that candidate is going to be okay by themselves, because ultimately they will be by themselves. And propping up someone in terms of their occult work is the worst possible thing to do. It's the most detrimental to their progress, and it is the most dangerous for occult influencers to be doing as we speak. And luckily enough, the system is protected from all of those people, because they're not getting inside and beyond and through the actual system that they are proclaiming and teaching each other and talking about and everything else. That is not the Western esoteric industry system that I'm talking about. So it is entirely self-protective, but a lot of people can do a lot of damage. Luckily enough, a lot of that is fairly limited. It's more limited to damage to people's time, attention, sense of self, faith in the world, all sorts of quite mundane things. It is not detrimental to the system itself that stays a precious jewel hidden from the sight of others trading in the temple, outer courtyard at least. So yeah, we could do videos on these. That's definitely a good idea, Tracy. Thank you. And to answer Nerdy Rodent's question about incense, yeah, there are very, very few incenses that I recommend to people, and a few of the suppliers are long out of business, because, you know, as ever, they're priced out by the McDonald's of incenses. So there is, however, particularly for those in America, Mermaid Magical Arts, spelt MERMADA, Magical Arts. The woman running that and her daughter now, I think, is apprenticed to her in incense making. I think that's the case, and I certainly hope it is. She produces the most incredible incense on the planet that I'm aware of. Mermaid Magical Arts. Her kaifi is the closest that you're going to get, I think, to ancient Egyptian kaifi, as far as we understand it. And kaifi is the most deific of the incenses. You're going to get me carrying on for an extra couple of minutes, because you've got me onto a subject that I'm passionate about, which is incense. But Mermaid Magical Arts, definitely, hands down. Unfortunately, it costs so much to get it sent to the UK that I bought a load a long time ago, and I keep meaning to buy some again. unfortunately, in terms of moving or potentially moving and so on, it's not the best time to be buying incense or even burning it. But I'm just trying to think if there's any UK blends. There are some down in Glastonbury that are pretty good, particularly the natural ones. There's a shop in Glastonbury. I can't remember what it's called. It's a long time since I went, but that had a lot of pots of incense, and I can't remember again the blend, unfortunately. Thanks, Tony, for the link to mermaid art. That's brilliant. What we should do actually is club together at some point and actually do a bulk order from Starchild. That's it, Starchild in Glastonbury. Thanks, Bill. We should do a bulk order from Mermaid. A, she'd love it, and B, you'll be blown out. Once you've smelt actual incense of that caliber, it's very difficult to smell anything that you tend to buy in shops and so forth. I'll give you one example. She came up with a blend because she had been given some musk oil, and she wrote on her website or in a newsletter or something that she didn't use musk oil or animal blends, animal oils and things like that for personal reasons, but because she'd been given this particular oil and it had been done in good faith, and so she felt that she wanted to honour the animal, the spirit of the animal, by actually blending it into a proper incense. And she blended this incense, and we bought some for a gathering, for a semi-ritual, semi-party, semi-gathering thing that we were doing at this quite large house here in the Lakes. And we had this party, and I came in and I put it, and I use an electric burner for incense sometimes. So you put the silver foil down, and then you put a block of the incense on there, and then it just heats it up underneath on an electric tray on a little plate about yay big. And you can change the temperature just to get the right temperature for the particular components to burn, because you don't want something to burn too quickly and so forth. And I kid you not, within about 10 minutes of that incense filling a couple of the rooms, there was one woman who was dancing as if Bacchus had possessed her, and she literally flung her top off, breasts flying, whirling around like a mad dervish and stuff. And the atmosphere, let me say, got a little bit heady. And it was down to burning this little bit of incense. And so, yeah, we really didn't need any ritualistic activity to be going on. The incense was doing all of the heavy lifting. And that's definitely something that Mermaid Arts, I don't think they ever produced anything like that again, and that's probably a good thing. So thanks a lot, everyone, and next week, hopefully, I'll be here, back again, and we'll take another look at anything of interest in Western esotericism, and we shall spend some time with each other next Friday. And again, if you're watching this as a recording, there is a members only section. I'm currently doing a new series of videos for that called the Laws of Initiation, which is exclusive to that, and it's part of the text that will be appearing in the Magister in a year or so for the second volume of the Magister. And any questions that you have, just drop them in the comments, and I'm going to catch up with the comments this weekend. We've been doing a big sale, a stock clearance sale of everything. That's going quite well. Thank you for anyone who has bought anything through that. I've been down to the post office a couple of times. And just to by the by, just in terms of news, not necessarily politics, although there's a political component to this, I noticed that the Supreme Court have ruled that the tariffs in America have gone beyond presidential authority, and so there's some reaction to that happening as we speak, this very moment, in terms of the recording at least. And I went to the post office a couple of days ago to send a couple of parcels. We were going to eat the postage for someone who'd ordered a UK only book in the US, and I'd said to Shay, it's okay, I'll send that from here. We'll eat that bit of postage. They've ordered 2 decks from you. It'll be fine. We won't make anything, but we won't make a loss, and it's helping the clearance sale. That'd be great. And I've got something sent to Australia. They knew it was going to cost £34, and they paid the £34 for the 2 decks to be sent from here by special arrangement. Went to the post office, put it on our account, came back home, and £100 was cleared out of our account by the post office, and it was literally £34 to send 2 decks in a large box to Australia, and £32 to send a book to America. And it's bonkers, absolutely bonkers, that sort of charge. I mean, we've got used over the last few years, and certainly post-COVID, to extortionate costs for sending things places, but everyone is so used to Amazon and free shipping and all of this, next day delivery and so forth. But for individuals, as some of you may well know, it is extortionate. It is impossible to send things now for a reasonable amount of money. If you bought anything from the US, then Shay is around and she's sending those out. She was just buying some new boxes to send stuff out in a neat way. I think she'll probably have those by now. She's very efficient. She's far quicker at sending stuff out than I am, although I'm hopefully giving her room for the money in the clearance sale, because I'm going down to the post office every other day. So it should be quite soon. It should be within a week, I would imagine, at least, Marie. So thank you for asking. And anything ordered in the UK up until a couple of things this evening, I've already sent out, so you should be getting them. Is it too late to buy anything from the US? No, absolutely not. And I've got your email, Tracy, so I'll get back to you over the weekend about that as well. But definitely UK and US, it's perfectly fine to send stuff out, and the stock levels are in the shop as well, so no one can buy anything that we don't have or don't have remaining, because I spent a lot of time building a proper shop system online for the clearance sale as well, to help everyone in terms of what's available and what isn't. Okay, everyone. Oh yes, and an odd knock on the door gave you the Tarot of Everlasting Day, Tony. Yeah, that was nice to hear that you got it under those circumstances. So that's great. So thanks a lot, everyone, and until next time, let me do a special bell ring for us. This is actually made out of the 7 planetary metals, this bell. So the corresponding metals to each of the 7 planets are in the alloy of the bell itself, and it's a very pure sounding bell. And one of the temple rules is that you must always let a bell ring out. You must never ever put it straight down and just deaden it off. So as ever, thanks a lot, everyone, and until next week, the worker is hidden in the workshop.